Okay. Thanks heaps for doing this, man.
That's okay. No, I'm interested. I'm interested in what you want to know.
Can you tell me a bit about how you began working in radio and what your current role is?
Yes. So in about 2004, Jason and I've been playing in Frenzel for 8 years, and Jason had been going for about 12 years. Jason's a singer in Frenzel. We were always being interviewed by Triple J, and they kind of realized that we could talk more nonsense, than other bands that get interviewed. So they asked us to help out to do some overnights and do a super request when Rosie was off for a night. And then I just stayed. Basically, Jason stayed for a couple of years or 3 years. They offered us the breakfast show pretty soon after that. We did a couple of did a bit of the afternoon show when Chris and Craig from Today were on leave, and did some afternoons. Some weekend afternoons, a lot of overnights. So we did a lot of practice, but during that they offered us the breakfast show because Adam and Will were leaving. And they wanted to do something that wasn't obvious. They wanted to not just get a standard, couple of comedians together or a comedy troupe or whatever. So they chose two people with absolutely no radio experience. So that was fun, and we had to learn pretty quickly. But so we at that time also we were kind of Jason and I had started doing an acoustic side project called the Self-Righteous Brothers. We weren't playing with Frenzel so much. I'm not sure why. I think we just kind of got bored because we'd been touring so constantly from 96 through to 2000, just 10 months of the year. And then the other 2 months would be spent writing and recording. And then then Jason got sick in the year 2000. And then we started to kind of start getting busy again in 2002, 2003. And then we realized that it probably wasn't sustainable to keep going at that kind of trajectory, to keep going at that speed, that pace, that intensity. So I remember we had just got a new bass player a couple of years before that, and we just released Sam Susi, and we sort of toured that pretty hard, and he was getting right into it. And then me and Jason are like, oh, we're going to do an acoustic side project. Am I going to get a job? So it was kind of a bit of him being like, oh, okay. But for us, I think for that long of intensive touring and just being together constantly, we definitely needed to have something else in our lives to I don't know, give us something to do, I guess, and then also to obviously to pay the bills, because we've been lucky for the 4 years before that. We got a payout from a record label in 1990, the end of 1999. We got like a advance from Sony when we signed to them, and I've been living on that until 2004 because there was never any money in Frenzel. We spend, because we tour so, I don't know, we would tour so much, we would just spend all our money touring, and so the money from the advance had almost run out when when we got the job at Triple J. So that was good timing.
Did you find that any skills that you gained playing in Frenzel actually transitioned into helping you when you were like a radio broadcaster?
Kind of. The skills were, I guess, being able to talk to lots of different people was something that we learned in Frenzel, because you're constantly in different worlds that you aren't really qualified to be in. You got to put out a lot of fires. You got to be around a lot of people that you normally wouldn't have to hang out with, and so you got to be quite good at dealing with, whether you're dealing with security guards, whether you're dealing with drunk people in crowds. So I guess that gave us a lot of negotiating skills, which are pretty good on radio when you've got to work things out on the run. But I feel like I came to Triple J very much unaware of most of the Australian music industry, because we'd been sort of in our world of punk rock. It was kind of interesting to suddenly have our genre blinkers open to all this other music, which was kind of nice. But there's no radio skills, I think, unless you work at a recording studio. Jason does now, but there are no recording skills there's no radio skills that you learn being in a band. There's no, because being in a band, everything's just like, especially for us, plug it in, turn it on, just go, have a go, have fun, yell a lot. With radio, you need to know every time anyone's talking, you got to make sure that their mic's on. You got to make sure you got to press the right buttons at the right time and everything. And we didn't come from that world at all. We didn't come from that world of being able to record and being able to do all that stuff ourselves. We learned it pretty quickly, but yeah. So I'm not too sure if there are too many crossover skills besides being able to talk a lot of rubbish.
Any significant changes you've noticed, like in the radio industry, moving from Triple J to your current one in ABC?
Yeah, so Triple J is broad in that it's Australia-wide, and broad in that kind of a way, but it's also quite tight because the audience is 18 to 25. And so that's who you are. Everything is done for audiences of 18 to 25. And so the breadth of what you do is quite narrow because 18 to 25-year-olds have certain things that they're interested in, and so coming to local radio, the geography of it is much more narrow. From Helensburgh down to Ulladulla, out to Goulburn. That's it, pretty much. We very rarely reach up into Campbelltown. We reach up into the Shire. We'll stretch down to Bateman's Bay, but that's it. But the scope of it, topic-wise, is open, completely open.
Right. Yeah.
There is nothing within reason that we can't talk about. There is no age group that we leave out, and that means that everything that fits geographically into our area, we can talk about. And so I was originally thinking, okay, so I just need to narrow my lens, but it's actually completely blown it wide open because there's everything, like in terms of music, everything from opera and classical music down to kids music, garage rock, punk rock, everything except for obviously really full-on hip-hop and metal because we have older people listening. There's no, the music doesn't have to be stuff that a certain age group will listen to because we want everyone to listen to ABC local radio. There's no sort of age group that it's set towards. And the same with the stories. We can do a story, we can interview scientists talking about, dementia research. We can interview, people at the learning space at University of Wollongong. We can interview, all the politicians and, hobbyists who are, making pottery in their backyard. It's just anything really. There's just, and it's so interesting because of the geographical boundaries, the community that you find in all these areas. You find this community of people that know each other. I might be talking to a poet in Milton who, starts talking about pottery, and then someone else will go, oh, I know that person. And, it just traces back to Kangaroo Valley, and then suddenly you're up in Southern Highlands. Yeah, it's really interesting. I think having that geographical limit means you can really find those communities of people that all listen to the radio, but also all have that connection, which makes it's really quite interesting. I did a night a couple of weeks ago. I did Nightlife, and that was Australia-wide. And it's quite interesting having to remember, oh no, this is back out there, and these people, I was going to say these people don't know each other, but actually everyone who listens to Nightlife does know each other because they all listen at the same time, and they all do the quiz together, this hour-long quiz thing. But so that is the two differences is that while the geography is much smaller, the scope is essentially endless.
Cool. Actually, on that, do you think that now in the age of internet and social media that radio plays an important role in promoting new music artists?
Yeah, I think it still does because as anyone who's left their Spotify on for too long knows, Spotify doesn't know what you like at all.
Yeah.
Spotify doesn't, and it's the same with every form of social media that has an algorithm curate what you see, and that if you click like on something, the robot goes, oh, that's what they like. So I'll find other things that the people who click that also clicked on. And so you essentially get these ever more narrowing group of things that you like because you've clicked on that as well. And so they keep deciding this group of things for you. And it's the same with Spotify. If you continually listen to certain music, it's quite funny the number of songs of mine that'll keep coming on. Like if I listen to anything vaguely Australian, the Bushwhackers will come on within 3 or 4 songs because I listen to Bushwhackers quite a lot. And so if I'm listening today, and it's either Bushwhackers or Troy Cassar Daily because we listen to his new album a lot. And I was listening to Paul Field, and when that album finished, within 2 songs, Troy Cassar Daily comes on. Radio isn't the robot. Radio is people. Radio is that mate of yours who heard something that is not on your Spotify list and just says, "Hey, Lindsay, I really want to come and tell you about this song," or says, "Have you heard of this style of music? Or have you seen what this band is doing?" And well, Spotify is, you like this, therefore you must like this. Radio is more your friend that doesn't really care too much what you like, but cares what they think you'll like.
Yeah.
I want you to hear this because I love this. I want you to hear it as well. And so it's that sort of curating kind of idea. Tastemaker is kind of like a bit of a weird word, but I feel like it is that kind of, you trust people on Triple J at least, and Double J and Triple J Unearthed. I reckon you trust those people, the people that listen to that radio, trust those people that they know, and it's not going to be every time. There's a lot of stuff that I would think is rubbish that gets played on those radio stations, and I'm sure and vice versa. There's stuff that I love that they would never play, but it's just the people who listen to that know that they're going to get some songs that, oh yeah, that's cool, thank you, I wouldn't have thought of that. And so I think that's how radio and the human way of curating things, and I'm sure it's not only limited to radio, but I feel like that is still miles ahead of the other ways of finding music.
Yeah, it's the curating rage type thing. It's, you know their tastes, they're going to know your taste maybe. Is there any piece of advice you'd give to someone that's new to the media or radio industry that you would have loved to have known when you started?
Yeah, I think, well, the time you got to spend getting ready for interviews is something that I wish I'd learned earlier in the piece. Like, and this is not just music interviews, all interviews. I want to know everything about the person that I'm interviewing that's relevant for the interview, and maybe even a bit more. Like, I like when someone says something, sort of offhand in an interview, and I know what they're talking about, and it's pretty nerdy. But I love if someone's talking about if you're talking to someone who's done a study on dingoes and agriculture in the middle of Australia, and they happen to mention something like I did this while I was in the Northern Territory, and you can go, oh, because you worked as a ranger in the Northern Territory and because you've done that bit of research, and then you can start talking about that kind of stuff which you wouldn't have got otherwise, or you can just having that extra bit of knowledge really turns it from an interview where you're asking your questions and they respond, and then you ask the next question, into more of a conversation with someone who the listener thinks, oh, okay, these people know each other. I'm interested in this conversation because they're sharing information which I wouldn't get from the press release. And that's obviously the other thing is so many interviews I hear, which I know are straight from the press release. And this is something that Frenzal Rhomb used to play with along, and I'm sure lots of bands do, where we would just make stuff up in the press release. Just absolutely wild stories. And because our life was pretty wild, we could make stuff up and people would believe it. Jason did put a dent in a tour bus that of our friends Les and Jake once, but the story ended up blowing up to Jason crashed Nickelback's tour bus. That's how the story ended. And that's the story that we still get asked about. No, Jason just got drunk and hit the side of a bus with a piece of wood, but and had to pay for the panel beating. That's what happened. But the story just blew right on. And I think maybe Chad Kroger was nearby at the time. But so the press release is kind of your jumping off point. And this is the same with everything, be it a piece of scientific literature, or a promo for it, or a music interview, and certainly any political interviews. Get what they say, get the keywords, chuck them into your search engine, and find out what other people are saying about those things, because then you're armed with that information that is very useful. If you're interviewing a politician and you're saying, and they're saying, like their press release is saying, that they've just announced, $200 million for the extension of a road, you can go, absolutely, you have. This is the same $200 million that you announced 6 months ago. Or, this is $200 million, which was actually, argued by the previous member from the other political party. And so you can just do all that sort of stuff. And you're not just being a mouthpiece for whoever you're interviewing. And that sounds that's very important for politicians, less important for music and science and all that sort of thing, because you do want to spread those pieces of information.
Yeah.
But it's really good to be armed with that stuff. And it makes it more interesting, I think. So it's basically just that, doing that extra bit of research, going that extra step and being interested in it, being really interested in what they're saying. And it's, I don't think it's not something you have to fake. You just have to be a naturally interested person and find what people are talking about really interesting. And if you can't, like, find the interesting thing in it, and that might be going a step forward and further and finding out where they've, why this person's got into this. Okay, you're researching this cure for this cancer because you have a relative who died of it or whatever. Like that sort of thing turns something that may just be a story about numbers and science and chemicals into a personal story.
Cool. Thanks, man. Lastly, just a bit of fun. So obviously you and Jay had, as we talked about before, the shows on Triple J. If you could pick one musician to host a radio show about music with now, who would you pick?
Oh gosh. To find a musician who I would want to have on a radio show.
Yeah, like co-hosting.
To interview other bands and stuff. So
something like how Henry Rollins has that show. Like if you and another musician could do something like that, where you just curate music the whole time.
Oh, great. Yeah. There's so many people that blow my minds with constant. I reckon someone like Mahalia Barnes or Jade McRae. Jade McRae, who's an amazing singer, but she's also so they're both obviously Mahalia Barnes, Jimmy's daughter. They have these amazing groundings in soul music and stuff because they because of their lineage, and Jade McRae sings with everyone. Whenever I've interviewed them, it's like you just get scratch this surface of like, okay, so tell me about this song, and then you find this huge connection to everything that they have to these people. Mahalia is named after Mahalia Jackson, sort of freedom fighter in America, and has this. Jimmy even sang a song, a Mahalia Jackson song. And I don't know. Anyway, I would love to hear their stories. I would love to have like these people who've grown up around music on a radio show. So everything that I play, they could say, "Oh yeah, I can tell you about this. I can tell you about it."
And they're like, they've probably known the person or passed them in a studio fully. Or something like that.
Yeah, fully, absolutely. Yeah. Their dad would have sung with them, or someone like Murray from the Wiggles, who has just seen, he's just done everything. He used to watch AC/DC and Sherbet when he was growing up out west, and then he goes on to play with half of those people and stuff as well.
Cool. That's all I've got, Lindsay. Thanks heaps for that.